We start at 9. Okay.
We start at 9.
And then Glenn, you wanted me to talk a little bit about the changes in our agenda.
Yeah, we're going to switch the second and the fifth, or I'm sorry, the third and the fifth item. Basically, the vendor management will be switched with the small group reporting guidelines.
Okay, perfect. So I think you took care of that for me then. I mean, unless I need to repeat it again on.
Go ahead. No, sorry.
You're good. You're good. Okay, well, this is Kimberly Hendricks, and I'd love to welcome you all to our September SEOW meeting. And if we can make sure that my members have their camera on, so I know who's here to do I don't have a roll call. I don't have anything here in front of me. Sorry to say.
Yeah, I can go over the roster if you want, Kimberly.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Bill, I think I saw you earlier.
Yes.
I'm here.
Dr. Laura. Okay. Robert.
Yes, I'm here.
Andrea, I believe I saw you. Andrea, are you here?
It says she's leaving.
Yeah, I know she said she was going to join a little bit late just because she needed to get into the office. So, but she is
probably
coming.
Switching. She's probably switching machines.
And Greg, I see you there. So the only ones we're missing at this point, Kimberly or Dr. Laura, and then Andrea's joining late, but
Andrea just rejoined.
Andrea.
Yep, I just rejoined. I'm here.
So we have
Good
a quorum.
morning. All right, I think we're ready to go then.
Okay. Well, actually, I'm first up. What the first item we wanted to go over, since it's the start of the SEOW year, so to speak, is if you go to I'm sorry, Andrea, I'm sorry, Kimberly, this is you actually. I'm sorry, forgot the meeting minutes from June.
All right, so hopefully you all had a chance to look at the packets that Rose sent us, and you've got the meeting synopsis from our June 3rd meeting. And what I'll need is a motion from someone to accept or edit the minutes as presented, and I'm opening the floor up.
This is Bill. June seems so long ago now, but I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes as presented.
Thank you so much, Bill. Do I have a second?
We'll second.
Thank you. So let's just do a vote. Do we have a vote of approval of the minutes as presented in first and second? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? I guess I should have asked if there's any questions, but looks like the minutes are accepted as presented. Thank you, Rose. All right, next up, Glenn, it's now your turn.
Sorry, sorry for jumping the gun there. The second item on the agenda, we wanted to, we did some short brief updates to the charter that was in existence for SEOW. And we wanted to get, have SEOW provide any comments, any changes, and whether they approved. And then second, we just more for information is we did put in a roster which lists who also are the chair and vice chair for the upcoming year. And then lastly, we put together a draft work plan and wanted to go over with that and get any changes, additions, questions that SEOW may have on the work plan. For the charter, the main thing that we did is the background. The one last year really kind of described SEOW as kind of a temporary joint measure between OIB and PEB. In this case, we took that temporary language out And since it's been permanently approved by the boards, we've been working permanently, we wanted to make sure that people understood when reading the charter that this is a permanent joint body between PEB and OEB. The other thing is underneath the work group roles, number J, or I'm sorry, H, what we did is we added a sentence related to the SEOW summer work groups, this kind of deep dive research that SEOW will do for both the boards. And then lastly, if you look under the members and officers, we just updated about the annual election for the chair and added the vice chair because the vice chair is also elected on an annual basis, and that the chair and vice chair will rotate between PEB and OEB. So I just wanted to, if folks want to take a few minutes, or if they had any changes, additions, say to the roles, guidelines, or any questions in regards to that.
And if you've had a chance to review and you don't have any questions, I would love to entertain a motion to accept the charter as presented.
Give me a sec just to.
I was going to say, if anybody has any questions, this is Greg. I'll make a motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Greg, unless anybody had any questions. Motion by Greg to accept the charter as presented. Greg? Yes, thank you.
This is Andrea. I'll second.
Thank you, Andrea. Any question? I'll go ahead and we'll go ahead and do a vote then. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it looks like the charter is accepted as presented. And just a FYI, there was a lot of work that went into this charter, and thank you to Mercer and all of Glenn and everybody at PEB and OEB, really on helping make sure that we were trying to use inclusive words, and we were trying to be very open to reality of what is real life for all of us when we are on these different work groups. So thank you all so much. Okay, Glenn, did you need anything about the work plan? Did I need to do anything with the work plan?
Well, if you can go to 2B, I just wanted to show folks, we also included the roster in here, and the roster, just to point out, under right now for the 25-26 season, which runs through June, the chair Kimberly Hendricks will be the chair, and Bill Gropp will be the vice chair. And then just we list the names, and then also really who are kind of the staff and consultant representatives. For Mercer, of course, there are others who come as subject matter experts who joined SEOW. So, there are a lot of other Mercer team members that support SEOW. And then, so the next one is the work plan. I just, this 2C, I'll try and be as quick as possible on this, but just wanted to go over what the meetings items are, get any questions from any SEOW members, any changes. This has gone through leadership, and they have approved it, but of course, it won't be final until approved by SEOW itself. For today, of course, we're doing the charter and work plan, small numbers, reporting guidelines. We have an update on the summer research group. This is really round one. Round two will be in December when we will make the final decisions. And then the last item will be the vendor partner performance review data related to type 2 diabetes and associated comorbidities. Round 2 will be in January. For October, we're going to have our annual medical quality PGs reports from the carriers. This is going to include performance in the last 2 years, action plan for measures below the PG targets, and then any proposed questions or changes that the carriers would have. The other part of October is PEB and OEB have behavioral health network performance guarantees. This is related to access and network availability. We are going to have, Mercer is going to provide an introduction summary of the 2025, what's called secret shopper surveys. This is ones where we look at really access, network availability, customer service, and then really kind of a continued discussion, because this is the first time that SEOW has looked at this. It started within the IWG. So we really wanted to provide the members all the background necessary on that. We don't have a meeting in November because that is the retreat day for the board, or November would be for the OEB board, and then PEB has its also retreat in November. We'll have what we're going to be doing is kind of round 1 of really 3 meeting items related to clinical renewal priorities. This is coming out of what the boards decide as part of their retreats is their clinical goals or basic research priorities, and then SEOW will review more detailed strategies, especially related to the renewals. Again, this is round 1 of really 3 parts for that. We'll have, as I said, round 2 for the behavioral network performance guarantees, the final recommendations for the summer research group, and then January. Again, January actually through, I would say, March, majority of the time will be spent on the clinical renewal items, because this is going to take a lot of time on that. But we will have some round 2, say, for the vendor network management, and then we will have recommendations for our medical quality performance guarantees. Right now, March and April are open. We try and leave as March and April open many times because of if more time is needed for the clinical renewal priorities. May will be the dental clinical utilization measures the carriers are going to report. And then we will identify the summer research group topic for 2026. And then lastly, June will be the healthcare innovation report, primarily focused on pharmacy, the dental clinical utilization targets and performance guarantees for the upcoming year, and then the election of the SEOW chair and vice chair for the 26-27 season. Are there any questions in regards to those items, their purpose or items that you feel that SEOW should be addressing? I just wanted to say, this is a draft work plan. As you know, it changes over time. We may have to move things around, may have to add items, especially if the boards request that SEOW address a certain item. So again, this is not set in stone. This work plan will change over time.
And Glenn, this, I have this as an action item also. Since this is a fluid document, just the motion would be to accept it as presented now, but with
Yes,
the
yes,
knowledge that it could change.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very good.
Okay. Again, I would entertain a motion if somebody'd like to make a motion on the draft work plan for us for this upcoming year as
This Bill,
presented.
I'll move that we adopt the current work plan as presented.
Thank you, Bill. Do I have a second?
This is Robert. I'll second.
Thank you, Robert. Any questions? I'll go ahead and take a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Well, thank you to, again, all of the folks that worked so hard on this work plan, and the motion will carry that we'll accept this work plan. And we know that if something comes up, we'll talk about it and make some changes. Thank you so much, Glenn.
Thank you.
So are we moving too fast that we're not going to be, I've got a speaker coming, but you guys will have to remind me. So one of my speakers is going to start,
Well,
but we're ready for the type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, I think it's the small numbers guidelines that because we switch things around.
Oh, perfect.
So if Rose, if you could go to, I'm sorry, I don't, there, next one. There we go.
Okay, perfect. I accidentally killed a tree and I printed all these pages.
So did I. No
I
problem.
meant to just print the agenda, and all of a sudden I was like, wow, who's printing? And then it was like, oh, it was me. All right. Okay, so this one is going to be presented by
Christy. I am here.
Christy.
Christy from Mercer.
Welcome. Good morning.
Good
Thank
morning,
you
Kimberly.
so much.
Yeah,
Okay,
of course.
small numbers.
Yeah, and good morning, SEOW members and partners. Nice to see you all today. We're going to talk about some data reporting guidelines. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to just today talk about some information regarding data reporting and the approach that we recommend taking going forward. And so the importance of this is that when reporting on an entire population, disparities in care for smaller populations can be masked by looking at large numbers and at a full population. And so in order for us to really identify disparities in care and really, again, aligned with goals of improving the health of all members, it is important to report on subpopulations within OEB and PEB. And reporting for such things as outcomes, closing care gaps, engagement, utilization, those types of metrics. And so there are guidelines in place from Oregon Health Authority, and particularly it's within the Health Policy and Analytics Division. And these guidelines are on reporting for race, ethnicity, and then also for small numbers. And as I said, our recommendation is to have OEB and PEB and the supporting work groups follow these guidelines that I'm going to go over here. So if we go to the next slide, please. First, I'm going to talk about race and ethnicity reporting. So a couple things here that we're aligned with is first, the race and ethnicity kind of categories and the way that the open enrollment form is set up for OEB and PEB, which is where the race and ethnicity information comes from, really started with the U.S. Office of Management and Budget. And so these categories, so there's race and ethnicity, and right now they sort of appear as two separate questions, but the recommendation really is as we're reporting them, we're going to combine the responses from the open enrollment forms. And so when we do combine this race and ethnicity, we also recommend, or the recommendation is to have a lone or in combination approach. And again, this is consistent with the Office of Management and Budget, and also we have met with the Health Policy and Analytics folks to get some guidance here as well. And really, the reason this recommendation is coming is because this is the most equitable approach, and really is allowing members to be reported on the way that they're self-reporting on the open enrollment forms and how they actually identify. And so to give an example of what this looks like is if somebody on an open enrollment form has self-reported that they were Hispanic and Asian, then what we would be doing is this alone or in combination is going to count that member in the Hispanic group alone or in combination, and also in the Asian alone or in combination group. What this is going to mean in our reporting going forward, and you'll see in, I think it's November, when we're looking more at the outcomes, clinical outcomes, is that some members are going to be counted more than once. So they'll be counted in 2 different categories. And so it will show that we're reporting on a higher number of members than is actually full part of the population. But again, this is an important component because it is equitable. It is capturing each member's identity as they're reporting it. And then the race and ethnicity groupings are here detailed. And so we have these different categories here. We also then will have a category for refuse to answer, because that is also an option on the open enrollment form, as well as an unknown. Any questions about this?
So this is Kimberly, real quick. So we have never been, people have refused to report. I mean, so it's never been that there's an exact counting, right? That every single person we have an answer to. So we won't get hung up on that we'll have extra, right? Is that kind of what we're thinking?
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, I think typically we do try to have, the numbers that we're reporting on reflect, one person in the full population. So but that isn't always the case, because a lot of people do fall into these refuse to answer or unknown categories. And in truth, what sort of has been happening, if we don't use the alone or in combination, is that we are really not counting that person as they really truly identify, if they're multiracial, multi-ethnic. So this is an important component. And when we're especially looking at conditions, it is important to look at different, race and ethnicities, because it is important as we're looking to close gaps in care.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, if we move to the,
I'm
oh, go ahead.
struggling with how the
Okay.
statistics are going to work when we're potentially double counting a unknown portion of people, and how we're going to do demographic analysis with that in statistics properly. I just can't see how the math works. I get the concept. I see we're going to do it. I think this puts a really crazy bias on the data analysis that is just not going to be, well, it's just, I just can't see how this works in the statistical analysis.
I'm not going to ask if we have one of our Mercer actuaries here to comment on that, because I am not an actuary.
Hi, Christy. Kirsten's here. Hi, Bill.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Okay.
Yeah. Bill, I think it remains to be seen. We have not reported on the data consistently this way before. And we don't know yet. It's a conversation that we've been having amongst ourselves here at Mercer. We don't know yet what we're going to see in the data and what meaning we're going to be able to make of it. It may be, like with most things that we do together as a clinical group, that as we start, the summer work group is a great example, but as we start with these projects and we learn more, then we know, okay, we need to adjust our path a little bit this way. I think when it comes to finding the balance between, as Christy said, wanting to represent people how they identify, but also at the end of the day, we are an action-oriented clinical committee. And we're trying to identify gaps in care in a way that allow us to take a clear action to make meaningful improvement. And so we'll begin with looking at the data together for the first time, coming out of the November board retreat at OEP in the afternoon. We're going to see the clinical data this way for the first time. And we'll be able to start to see, is this the right way to look at the data for the purpose of making our decisions for what we're going to do with our clinical strategy and our renewal strategy? Do we need to also report the data in a slightly different way? That helps us identify the action step that we need to take. So it's evolving. It's one of the, OEB and PEB are trailblazers, right? It's part of OHA's mission to advance healthcare here in Oregon, and sometimes that means we take on things we don't exactly know how to do right from the start. But we are committed really to representing people how they identify, which, as Christy said, is often multiracial. Or so we want to start there and then see where we go.
I get all that part, but from a bias understanding in the statistics, will we know the number of people who are double identifying in each category?
Yeah,
I don't need to know individuals. I just need to know percentages.
Yeah, the most clear way to see this, Bill, and probably you're at a computer, but if not, you could do this a little bit later, or anybody else on the committee. The clearest way to see where this starts is to look up the OEB or PEB in enrollment forms. And the enrollment forms are laid out in a way that allow people to select one ethnicity, and there's 3 choices. There's Hispanic, non-Hispanic, and then there's an option for people to not report either of those 2 things. And then there are multiple race options as well. What's unique about the race category is it allows people to select more than one option. And so I know, Bill, you're thinking like a semiconductor engineer. And so if you can visualize how this data comes together, a person is going to select an ethnicity, one of those 3 choices. And then they're also going to select one or more races. And we know all that. We have all of that information in our eligibility file. So when Christy says, for the purpose of analyzing the data in a meaningful way, we've come up with this smaller set of groupings. We still have underneath all those groupings the individual ethnicity and race selections, as well as, to Kimberly's point, we also know who declined to report. And we'll be able to say when it comes time to do this reporting, we'll be able to know underneath exactly who is in each category. Of course, I'm not talking about personal information. I just mean the number of people in each category who identified multiple selections or just one, where they are, any other demographic information about them. And the small numbers guidelines, they do contemplate statistical credibility, and we will as well.
Yeah. So that's my point, is that if I ask you just to report the chi-squared for the categorical groupings, you'll be able to just say that there is statistical balance here, right? I don't need to know the numbers. I just need to know that that's done.
Well, this is Robert. I'm not a statistician, but I agree with Bill that the data, I'm not sure that it's going to be totally valuable. We can't even calculate percentages doing it this way, but I'm not opposed to doing this on a more anecdotal basis if it tells the story of where we need to head. I don't think we can rely on data per se, but I think we can rely on the information.
And I repeat, I agree. This is the correct way to go. What I'm trying to figure out is how to look at the data when we start seeing it. I'm trying to get an advanced start on just how to look at the data, knowing this is the underpinning of the groupings, of the categorical variables. Anyhow, enough said about that, right?
They're good questions. They're all the right questions. We share a lot of those questions. Bill, I'm making a note that as we bring subset reporting to SEOW or either of the boards, that we will also bring information about how many people were in each category, who are we including, how did we roll people up and aggregate different groups to make something that is credible if having the groups on their own aren't. So the background and the method we will also bring and have handy, and perhaps, Bill, that's something that we can make a habit of talking about in SEOW leadership also, and we'll begin to have a preview of that data well in advance of the November board retreat, so we can begin having that conversation.
And it's just a thought question, not to be answered here, but just throwing it out to the medical field, that is mixed race a separate category when understanding disease analysis kind of thing? I don't know the right word, but yeah, I know we separate out like for birth rates and issues at birthing, you know, between different groupings by race and ethnicity, but does the medical community even follow mixed race, or is that just not? And that's not a question for now. That's a question just to think about.
Yeah, maybe I will ask Dr. Twing, who's on this call this morning also. And I hear you, Bill. The deeper part of this conversation is for later, but it is a really important topic. So I would like to ask Dr. Twing to just give us some thoughts about that, and then we can move on, as you say.
Yeah, so I think the permutations and combinations becomes very heterogeneous. I think clinically we don't know, because we don't know the proportionality of influences of those culturally based, ethnicity based tendencies, behavior preferences, and norms. So the short answer is I don't think we know, and we haven't done good research because it gets complicated now. The sample size gets smaller and smaller once we start to slice and dice the permutations.
Yeah, and I kind of figured that, but just I'm just thinking about it. That's all. Being in that category myself, you know, it's kind of like, well, what does that mean? Anyhow, enough said.
All right. Thanks, Kirsten. Kate, thanks, Dr. Twang. All right, let's move to the next slide. So as we talked about too, that there are some small numbers guidance when we're reporting subpopulations. And so this does specifically come from the Office of Health Analytics under OHA. And really there's two components here that when we're looking at small numbers reporting that we want to be mindful of is one is, you know, we're looking at confidentiality and then also reliability. And so according to the guidelines, you know, really we want to make sure that however the data is being released, that it's protecting confidentiality regardless of the data type. We are also under the guidelines that, you know, there's encouragement to aggregate race and ethnicity groups rather than suppressing. So very important, again, to show different race ethnicity groups, but as we're doing in the previous slide, some aggregation in order to show those subpopulations versus suppressing and not showing it at all. And then just one of the guidelines I think is important is that if the person who is compiling or the entity that is compiling that information, you know, if as we're compiling it, we do notice a bias or something, then that needs to be noted when that data is being presented. And so just some pretty, you know, clear guidelines is that to protect confidentiality, that reporting any, we can report subpopulations or different metrics when the population size is 50 or greater. And if the population size is less than 50, then we are to suppress that data or again, do some of that intermediate aggregation. For reliability, when the numerator is greater than or equal to 12 of that group, then we can consider that information to be reliable. If there is that numerator is greater than or equal to 5 and less than 12, then we should put a reliability warning. And then we do need to suppress the data if the numerator of that group is less than 5. And so again, important, you know, there's this balance, I think, between reporting on subpopulations or different metrics. It's not always related to race, ethnicity. There's also geographic, age, different, you know, all those different kind of ways that we can look at the population in order to take actions. But important to have these guidelines in place so that we then can report on it in a way that protects confidentiality and helps with the reliability of the information. Any questions on the small numbers reporting? All right, I think I have one more slide next, please. And so this one is really inclusive language in action, really pulling together some of the components we just talked about. But again, it's really important to consider, how reporting on data, showing data, even how we collect the data can needs to, describe the different needs of populations. And so as our guidance here is really, again, using that OHA small number reporting guidelines. Utilize the alone or in combination approach. Again, as Kirsten said, we're going to be looking at this data for the first time, and we'll make sure to provide that other information so that we know the numbers in those groups and then also where the overlap exists. Thirdly, here, just reporting on subpopulations to inform how healthcare trends may disproportionately impact populations. But again, these different, can be by income, geography, or other social categories. Always avoid analysis that privilege a population as being normal or desirable compared to the others. We'd like to avoid the term BIPOC and instead name the racial ethnic groups, or even spell out, if we're using an acronym, spelling it out. And then using it, we want to avoid using the grouping term other and instead name the subgroups. So if there is a group that is a combination, then naming what that subgroup is. And we can use a more descriptive term that captures the grouping. And one example is, people from racial and ethnic minority groups, but just making sure that we're not using the term other and naming the subgroups that are in that grouping or that aggregating that's being done. Any questions on this? Concerns? Bill, I kind of see you like.
I'm just wondering where that last one, like, who brought that up, right? I mean, as a member of multiple, organizations, like, I've never heard anybody complaining about that, right? So it's just kind of obvious. But anyhow, enough said about that. Right.
Well, I will say, so we also, we put on here, we do have the OHA writing style guide that one specifically comes out of not using the category other and naming the
Okay.
categories in there. So following again the OHA style and writing guides. Yeah.
All right, cool. Just
Yeah.
Yeah,
one
and
of
I think
those new ones.
philosophically too, Christy, the idea there is that, for our minority populations, people feel sensitive to always being the other category that's getting compared to the major white category. And so if the whole point of our race and ethnicity subset reporting is to, treat every group as it stands on its own and understand what's going on for that group and how all of the groups are different without selecting one as the norm that we're comparing all of the others to, they're all equal, then our terminology needs to follow that as well.
Oh, good.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Christy. And again, good questions, Bill and Robert. So Glenn, I'm a little not sure where I'm going next. Is it going to be summer research group update?
Well, yeah, we have two options here. We can do a very long break, a 20-minute break, basically go into the vendor management report, or if Mercer doesn't mind, we could jump into the summer research group, take a break, and then do the vendor management report at the end of the meeting. I would kind of.
Dr. Chuang is here, so Ian looks ready. Glenn.
Okay, yeah,
I'm happy to do it. Yeah.
So I think we could jump into the summer research group.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rose. Yeah, before we start, I definitely want to, thank all the participants who were involved and engaged and contributed to our SEOW Summer Research Group. during their summer months. They support and they contribute to the input that I'm going to go over here, and especially appreciative of our carrier partners, because we'll acknowledge this is new. This is a deeper dive into sort of some of the clinical outcomes that we are interested in, and it is challenging. And we understand and appreciate the commitment that they're making, both during the sessions, but also in the follow through that I will outline. And we believe that despite the challenge, it will be a meaningful insight that we get out of this. So thank you, everybody. So a little history around the SEOW Summer Research Group. The goal of this was to be a subgroup out of SEOW to support SEOW's mission regarding providing members access to high quality healthcare, improving members' health status by taking more time to do some research, to engage in discussion and recommendation around some important clinical topics. This started in 2023, and we've kind of had 2 years of a different focus. First year was around the doula coverage and initial look at the GLP. The previous year, we looked at traditional health workers, and the outcome of that was sort of a recommendation and to the CL to review and consideration, and then further recommendation to the boards. The research group does include OAB and PEB board members, as well as contributions and inputs from the OHA staff, health plan representatives, and the Mercer subject matter experts. This year, the research group focused on incorporating outcomes data to improve the effectiveness and the value of sort of around type 2 diabetes care and treatment. So step one was to kind of define and propose how we want to look at outcomes and the kind of outcome data that we will tap into. Phase 2 and phase 3 will start to take advantage of that analytic and start to take a look at treatment standards and tie it to outcomes that matter. Potentially, with that insight and the data, we may look at strategies to address and improve and drive towards the meaningful outcome, possibly reimbursements, process regarding coverage and things like that. But that will be informed by the data. So that's the goal. And this first phase was to look at the outcomes data and what we can do with what we have currently. Next slide, Rose. So kind of the process and the relationship across the boards, OEB and PEB, to the SEOW committee and then the SEOW Summer Research Group is kind of cyclical. Starting with the board, it sets the SEOW goals and priorities, and a lot of the priorities are around closing gaps in care and how we can optimize improved care, standards of care. And obviously important within that is equitable access and affordability of that care. And based on that, the SEOW committee kind of takes that and starts to apply the plan, the board's direction into something tactical. So again, looking at the past, we've identified a couple areas, and for this current year, we're looking at type 2 diabetes. And the thinking around type 2 diabetes is to kind of start looking more deeper into the outcomes, how we can look and evaluate clinical performance around the treatments, and possibly set some parameters, moving our quality measures. As an example, this is just sort of a potential area of consideration to something more proactive, such as more defined performance guarantees around type 2 diabetic care and treatment. Simultaneously, we hope that this creates an elevation of transparency in terms of understanding what the two plans are providing in terms of the care and the outcomes that are being achieved. And along the way, I think it'll be novel to identify potential innovations in terms of how we approach. I think populations are always unique, and until we sort of characterize them, dive into the actual care and utilization and outcomes, we really don't have clarity, and we're sort of doing broad strategies. So potentially with that data, we can be more innovative and surgical in some of the approaches and recommendations for optimizing care. The last step, which is a SEOW research group, this is the roll up your sleeve, during the summer months where we do that deep dive. We've done this 2 years now, and this year it's around type 2 diabetes and the associated comorbidities. And the goal is to make that recommendation later on upon presentation of the data back to the SEOW committee. And then the SEOW will review the data, by which it will make that recommendation to the board. So that's that full circle. And the final decision will be a board recommendation from OEB, as well a board recommendation for PEB, respectively. So hopefully this process is clear, and having worked on these with different clients, this is very novel, and it is innovative for what we're trying to do. This deeper dive, collaborating across care. So it's really exciting to see how far we can take this. Okay, next slide. So now let's dive into the actual work effort this summer. So hemoglobin A1C was the focus for type 2 diabetes. And hemoglobin A1C is really an abbreviation. It's a lab test. It measures glycosylated hemoglobin. So the short description of it is, on your red blood cells, there are things we can measure that provide a longer term insight into how well somebody's glucose is being controlled or stable within that individual. So it's measuring the average blood sugar level over about a 2 to 3 month period. And it's 2 to 3 months because that's the lifespan of the red blood cell. So that's how much information we can get from one single hemoglobin A1C test. Now, the hemoglobin A1C levels, the meaningful levels are below 5.7 is considered normal. Between 5.7 and 6.4 is prediabetes. And then above 6.5 is considered diabetic. But obviously there's severity depending on how high that level is. Now, hemoglobin A1C is very useful because it gives you that longer term picture, number one. Two, it's good for diagnosis as well as ongoing tracking by looking at that value over time. And it's also useful in the prediabetes state, right? So we know that you don't get to elevated hemoglobin A1C in one big jump. So there's opportunities to pre-identify those that are at risk early on. Let me pause there for a second. I'm getting some static in my image. Can I confirm that everyone's hearing me okay?
No problem on my end.
Thank you. Okay, now with any blood tests, there are pros and cons, and in the case of what we're trying to do, there may be some limitations that we just have to factor in. It doesn't keep us from proceeding, it's just things to consider. The value of the hemoglobin A1C is it's convenient. It is commonly used, a test, commonly available, and it's standardized and very reliable. So across testing labs, it's the same reference range, so it's very consistent, and we can aggregate the data to do any analytics. The limitations are its goal is different, so we're looking at longer term stability and control of hemoglobin A1C, of diabetes, as opposed to looking and measuring glucose level, which obviously will fluctuate often, fluctuate with meals, fluctuate with physical activity. But since our goal here and our objective is really looking at the long-term stability and improvement in individuals with type 2 diabetes, I think that's a reasonable compromise to get the use the lab test that provides that longer-term comprehensive picture. So the short answer is it's different. It's not measuring glucose, but I think for what we're trying to answer, it's the best choice. There can be some limitations for those individuals with hemoglobin abnormality or potentially iron deficiency anemia. Since we're measuring something off the red blood cell, as you can imagine, if there's any conditions involving the hemoglobin cell, that the test may be less reliable. But that's not going to be very common or something that we need to adjust for. It does cost more than glucose test, but in the context of our health plan, I think that is negligible, but it is something that we need to be cognizant of. And the approach assumes equitable screening in our OWEB and PEB members, meaning that across geography, race, ethnicity, the approach to using this test for the purpose of screening, for diagnosing and tracking is uniform. So that's something that we want to gain some insight on, and but it is something that coming into this, we acknowledge may be something that we have to account for. So that's the quick highlights around hemoglobin A1C and why it's useful for what we're trying to do. Next slide.
Quick question.
Yeah. Yes.
What's the research community think about? There's several companies now making Lancet-based home or office tests without requiring a draw. Does the medical community have a opinion on that? I've got one sitting right next to me, actually.
In terms of utility, in terms of
accuracy, usefulness, useful, you know.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's been a gradual evolution around lab tests from, you know, lab-based to point of care, bedside, and now more tests being available, for lack of a better term, sort of consumer ready, consumer available. For individuals that are more proactive, more self-advocating and self-care, I think this level of information and data can be highly informative to guide that individual. The reliability is relatively good based on what I understand. You know, they're CLIA certified lab tests, so they meet that rigor. I think the variable comes into play is the individual who's using the lab test. Are they using it in an informed manner with guidance from a primary clinician, right? So I think it's just making sure that they're using it for the right reason and they're applying that information in the appropriate way is what's critical.
I was just a little surprised that my last clinic visit for general physical, they used a kind of a finger lab test. And I was like, well, if they're using it, right, you know, and they trust that number. I mean, we made decisions based on that number, right? And I was like, okay, well, it seems like they're trusting of it. So low cost, easier, better than a draw, right?
Yes.
So anyhow, just asking.
Yeah, it's a gradual evolution, and that point of care testing is definitely now more reliable and more common and convenient. Yes, good point.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's continue with next slide. I'm going to have to pause for a second and refresh my screen for a sec. It's frozen. Rose, what slide are we on right now?
5.
2, 3, 4. Okay.
And it's the slide side. Why focus on tracking HbA1c for T2D?
Yeah, my screen is not refreshing for some reason. My apologies.
Your video and voice are fine.
Okay. Then I will just call out the number for me. Thank you. Okay, so why focus on tracking of hemoglobin A1C for type 2 diabetes? So in the summer work where we discussed this, and type 2 diabetes is a condition that's of increasing prevalence. So there's a significant proportion of the population that have type 2 diabetes. It is expected that this prevalence will continue to grow, and it has significant health consequences in the sense that type 2 diabetes can lead to the more significant, more severe medical conditions such as cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, a chronic kidney disease, and also something that's becoming more aware which is something called MASH. Basically, it's fatty liver disease, not due to chronic alcohol overuse. So that is relatively new. It's probably underdiagnosed, but we know that that is going to become a secondary comorbidity with prolonged and especially unmanaged, not well controlled type 2 diabetes. So that's why we all agree that this was a good focus for the summer research group. And the hemoglobin A1C just kind of made sense because it was going to give us an insight into both the distribution around the severity and how well individuals with type 2 diabetes are controlled. But by looking at it in context of their medication treatment, we were hoping to get some insight into, based on current standards of care, if there was any insights in terms of how well individuals were progressing or improving from their treatment choices that were being made. So what we'll go through today is kind of the decision, the discussion, and the recommendation that came out of the summer research group around the purpose and objective, the key metrics that we're going to look at, the kinds of reports and analytics that will hopefully come out of it. And that's going to be defined by a methodology that all the carriers contributed to and help refine to the final proposal that we will go over here. And lastly, the stratification around looking more segmented into the analytics around treatment groups. Next slide, slide 6.
Was that compared to just running with a CGM, and tracking your CGM?
So part of the constraints and limitation that we had to account for is the availability of the data currently. So CGM is good for the continuous. So CGM is continuous glucose monitoring. For those that refresher, it's the thing that you can slap on the arm and it will continuously monitor your glucose. So it is being more utilized, but it is not as ubiquitous in terms of available data. So part of the requirement or the objective was a decent pool of available data by which we can use to analyze as much of the population of type 2 diabetes as we can. So CGM would give us richer data, but we would not have sufficient number, and it would be hard to get uniformly across all carriers, across all providers and members. So what we defined as the purpose for this analytic project was to review diabetic outcomes across both OM and PEP carrier populations with a focus on hemoglobin A1C, factoring all those other considerations that was discussed and what Bill raised. But the hemoglobin A1C seemed like it was the best choice for this purpose for right now. And the purpose was also to use this data-driven approach to inform and guide our decision-making, recognizing that we'll have to work around some of the limitations and constraints that the data set may pose. So the objective was to benchmark carrier population on their ability to improve patients' hemoglobin A1C relative to the prescribed medication use. And then over time, start to look more holistically, right? So if the value of the clinical as well as the value outcomes is to optimize the treatment choice to improve hemoglobin A1C that leads to reduced progression of disease and condition, then how do we look at that? And over time, we want to get to that point. So this was phase 1 of a few, and we have recognized that. And the goal was to utilize this result to identify potentially leading practice, understand further subpopulation needs and opportunities better. There was a deliberate focus on creating the medication treatment categorization in a way that would inform us on some of the more contemporary, the latest medication treatment options that are available for various reasons, clinical efficacy, but also potentially utilization and cost. So we created that hierarchical group to help inform that once we get the data. So that was the purpose and objectives that we concluded and are making recommendation to SEOW. Next slide. Now, with regards to the reporting decisions, here's what we define as within scope. We did feel it was important to leverage and take advantage of what is available around age, race, ethnicity, as well as geographical data. Because we believe and anticipate that the availability as well as the treatment approach may vary by some of these factors. So again, it's one of those things, unless we start to ask and look, we don't know. So we're going to try to take advantage of what data is available and start to get some insights into that. We did conclude to look at the percentage of change in hemoglobin A1C improvement. Again, that was a limitation that we accepted because getting actual hemoglobin A1C result, the actual test value, was something that was not going to be universally available across all carriers providers in an easy, accessible manner right now. So you'll see in our proposal how we measure hemoglobin C is going to be based on a categorical code. And with that, we can look at percentage change, but not actual measurement change. We are going to sort of do a deeper dive through segmented analysis for some of the more advanced therapies. And we want to compare potentially population subgroups using that data. Not all diabetics are equal. We recognize that. So part of this phase 1 was to use something that is clinically based, something called a Charlson Comorbidity Index, to at least provide some insights, characterization around clinical severity. So the Charlson Comorbidity Index looks at other chronic conditions that we know are a reflection of severity, of complexity. So that's one way to do a simple, well, not simple, but at least an accessible way to look at potential case mix. With this data, we hope we can proceed to phase 2, which is to start to understand the subgroups of treatment approach in context of healthcare costs and utilization over time. So that's not in the scope for this deliverable, but it was something that we recognize can be a potential, and it will be useful to be informative to both SEOW as well as the boards. There are limitations that have been incorporated into this study, and part of this is, since we're looking at medication snapshot, we cannot make any conclusion or infer around medication intensification. It's a fancy word for saying we're not analyzing how medication got sequenced, right? Did medication A get used before B, or did B get used before A? We're not looking at that for logical reasons and complexity reasons. Other things we have to account for is we're not in the beginning stratifying by risk, right? So we're going to characterize using Charlson Comorbidity Index, but that's going to be an attribute. We're not segmenting based on that. And similarly, we acknowledge that risk is a generic term, so it's not static, and it doesn't fully explain everything. So we recognize that we have to think about difference in risks within the population, but we're not doing a deep sort of epidemiological analysis into based on risk stratification. And lastly, we acknowledge that as much as we're going to take advantage of what is available, our healthcare population data is going to be limited, so our insights into potential disparity may be limited. And that's just something we just have to be cognizant of. And we kind of discussed that in the previous session already about what things to consider as we look at that data. Okay, next slide. So how we are going to report on hemoglobin A1C, what the group decided, it was discussed, and what we concluded was to let's leverage and take advantage of what currently is already in place. So our carrier partners provide our quality measures tied to HEDIS reporting standards. So there exists right now a high level percentage of certain diabetes related treatment measures tied to HEDIS. It's part of the glycemic status assessment data set from HEDIS. So the good news is we've been tracking that for a period of time. Now we're going to kind of do a deeper dive into what that data really means for our population. But what we're also doing is leveraging how the data gets defined, as well as the process for getting the data that the carriers already have in place. So we are going to look at type 2 diabetes specifically only for the adult population 18 to 75, consistent with how we're doing it for HEDIS. We're going to exclude certain subgroups as defined here. Again, it's in line with HEDIS, so we're not sort of creating new approach. We're going to stay consistent with this and take advantage of processes that are in place. The assessment period that we're going to look at is going to be the following. We want to look at the baseline hemoglobin A1C result of those individuals that we know with type 2 diabetes in the July 2023 to June 2024 time period. So that will be the baseline starting point. Then we want to see over a period of up to a year, what is the change in the hemoglobin A1C tied to those treatment that was prescribed. And the second assessment period is July 1st through June of 2025. So July 2024 through June 2025. We're asking that we want a minimum of 6-month time gap between these two time periods. So in case you're using the latest hemoglobin A1C in June, we want June of 2024, we want the second hemoglobin value in the second assessment period to be at least 6-month period of time. So we can measure and give the individual a reasonable time to respond and react to the treatment. So that's the approach for the analysis. Let me pause there on this topic. Questions, thoughts?
So tell me what's the frequency of recommended A1C testing that we're recommending for type 2 diabetes people.
So for diagnosed individuals with diabetes, the recommendation or the treatment guidelines suggest up to every 3 months, because hemoglobin is measuring a 2 to 3 month window for ongoing evaluation. Conceivably, somebody who's well managed and stable, it can drop down to once every 6 months, but minimum once a year at the very minimum.
Once a year is the minimum, right?
Bare minimum.
And we cover that. We cover that in our insurance programs, whatever you want to call them. We cover that cost, right?
It is covered within the plan, yes. Now, the costs, I believe it is, I do not have it in front of me, but there may be some copay or copayment.
Yeah, no, okay, that's normal. But I'm just saying we have them included in our plan with the options of that. Okay, got it.
Yes. Okay. Rose, next slide, please. So since we're going to be using the HEDIS measurement approach, we're basically using the CPT code that groups hemoglobin A1C. So we're going to look at the number of individuals in each of those categories. We will assess and do statistical analysis, looking at counts, mean, as well as standard deviation within each group. We are going to do some deeper dive in looking at treatment groups A through D, and I'll describe what those are. And because of the way the latest treatment guidelines recommend approach to type 2 diabetes, we're looking into the integration and the use of metformin in conjunction with some of the latest innovative treatment choices that are available, specifically SGLT, so that's a class of medication, as well as GLPs, right? So those are just two of the more newer treatments that are available. Treatment guideline provides recommendation for how they're used and how they're used in conjunction with metformin. Now, other things we're going to look at include medication adherence. So obviously, knowing that what was prescribed is important because that puts you in one of the treatment categories. We're going to take advantage of an analytic approach looking at claims around medication to estimate adherence. And adherence is basically described as how well an individual is taking the medication consistent with recommended dosing. So there's a way to extrapolate by looking at the prescription refill data to estimate if the individual is taking the medication consistently over that time period. And the decision was to proceed with the proportion of days covered, which is just an analytic approach for doing that. And the last analytic attribute that we are also going to do is CCI, which is the Charlson Comorbidity Index that I described earlier. That will help to characterize how much comorbidity and clinical severity individuals have within each treatment group.
Thanks, Ian. I just want to let you know too, because I know you can't see your screen, that Rose has advanced to the next step slide.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, the next steps basically will be a report out from our carrier partners. So we are in the phase of doing the data analytics, and appreciative of all the carriers and their hard work in that effort. And we will seek for a report out, a review of the data in November timeframe, followed by a reporting of the findings out to the SEOW committee here in December. And that will be the goals for this year, 2025. And that information and insight will hopefully be leveraged and recommendations will subsequently proceed to OEB and PEB board, respectively, to help aid in any decisions and recommendations for the 2026, 2027 renewal cycle. So that's the plan. And currently, like I said, our carriers are in the throes of doing the analytic work, and we are really appreciative and acknowledge their continued commitment and support. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Did anybody have any questions that they didn't ask while Doctor was presenting? And there are some more data points in the appendix for us also. Okay, so Glenn, I think this is where you wanted, I didn't have any action item on this, correct, Glenn?
No,
Okay.
it was just for review and as you asked the CL group whether they had any specific questions.
Yes. And I don't know how many, I mean, everybody doesn't have their cameras on. I don't know how many members of the summer, again, thank you so much for the group that gave up their time and energy to be on the summer work group, summer research group. We absolutely appreciate everybody that stepped up and helped with that. Thank you so much. Okay, I think we're going to take a break. I think, is that
Yeah, I think that
Okay.
we should take a break right now.
Okay.
Basically, I think we put 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, we've got 15 minutes in there, so I think
Oh,
we should be okay to go to 10:30. Our next presenter, um, Rob and Katie, they probably are already here because everybody's so good about coming early. But let's go ahead and take a break. And now it's 14 minutes because I've been talking, um, and we will start back up at 10:30. Thank you. I'll put it in the chat.
Hey, Kimberly, is this where I'm supposed to be? Okay,
Yes, this is the last leg. Thank you, Rose.
thanks.
Thank you for like we just made you juggle a little today, but I sure appreciate it.
That's okay. It's no problem.
I need to develop some sort of roll call or something until I get everybody down because I feel bad when I don't know who everybody is. I mean, I do know, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, you can ask Glenn to send you one before the meeting, or I can send it to you.
Perfect. Thank you.
I do it for PEB and OEB.
Yeah. Oh, perfect.
It took me 6 months to learn all your PEB people's names.
I know. I'm so glad Bill that I was like, I read that email and I'm like, yes, Bill is, I still got Bill. So it's all good. I mean, there's
Yeah,
just so
you
much
could just,
expertise.
Kimberly, you can just, number 2B, attachment 2B is the roster. So you could just use that if you want
Oh,
to as a roll
yes.
call.
True. I totally can. Yep.
Want to save a few trees out there, I guess.
Yeah. And I'm just glad that, I mean, especially with the PEB board, there were so many times that we had to really call people by name, get their vote and document it for,
Yeah.
legal reasons. And it's just nice at SEOW we can just really do a group, yay or nay.
Yeah, I mean, and that's how, since the beginning, CEO's kind of operated on that, really trying to get, consensus, but not as formal as, some other groups.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate the break. I literally started my day at 7 and went from one
Yeah.
meeting to the next. And when you said, "Oh, should we take a long break?" I was like, "Yay!" And then we didn't. And I was like, "Okay, I can do this."
Well, and we are running ahead of time,
Yeah.
so.
Because, I have
Oh,
to
and
go through 3 locked doors to get to a toilet in the prison, so.
Kimberly, Bill had asked for an update on vaccine coverage, and at the end of the meeting, Margaret can give a brief update
Perfect.
on that.
Perfect.
Yeah, and apologies for being such an engineer earlier.
That's fine.
We appreciate you.
No apology needed, Bill. We would have thought you needed your temperature taken if you hadn't asked. All right, looks like we're at 10:30 and we're going to go ahead and welcome back everybody to the SEOW meeting. And we are going to cover our next topic is on type 2 diabetes and associated comorbidities, vendor partner management update. And we have Rob and Katie, I believe, are going to be presenting for us.
You are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and nice to see this group again. I know I've been on a few of these calls thus far. I'll reintroduce myself for everyone, though, in case you've forgotten who I might be in the role. Here with the group. I'm a senior well-being strategy consultant with Mercer. And have been working with the PEB and OEB teams over the past 6 months or so. And I have also my colleague Katie with me, who's going to present the second half of this presentation today. So with that, we can jump into the slides and kick things off. So we can move I think to the next slide after this. One more. All right, perfect. So the goal of our conversation today is to really talk about the vendor partner solutions that address type 2 diabetes and associated comorbidities, and to really talk about insights into their performance and oversight into the impact that they're having on the population. And so to tee that up, we wanted to spend a fair amount of time talking about what's been accomplished so far and what some of the history has been for this project as we move forward, to really set the context as to what the goals are with this next project. So you're not like any other employer that we work, not unlike any other employer that we work with, where type 2 diabetes and the comorbidities that are associated with them are top diagnosis within the population and within membership. And in those years, SEOW and other groups within PEB, including the PMAC and Worksite Wellness Coordinating Council, have all really taken various steps to address the diagnosis. And part of that is adding new vendor partners that directly address those needs. And as partners come into into play with a population, it's important to evaluate the programs and to see opportunities to see how they're performing. So just in a timeline of where we've been so far, about a couple of years ago in April 2023, this group aligned on a multi-year holistic approach to look closely at metabolic disorders. And metabolic disorders is sort of a broad term that we use for uh, um, uh, type 2 diabetes and associated comorbidities. So it sort of is an umbrella term to all of this. And then as part of that approach, the group added vendors, Virta, Omada, and Mighty Health for weight management. A year later, in April 2024, SEOW reviewed those programs, and then added Weight Watchers and Predi, including engagement reporting, and recommended renewing them for another year for 2025. As that was going along, late 24, early this year, PEB staff and Mercer looked really closely into the Omada Diabetes Prevention Program and some observations that suggested that there was some room for overall program improvement, and have continued to work on that. Have met with Omada recently, gotten some updates, so continue to have evolved on the insights into the Omada program. In March 2025, as this was all going along, you'll probably all remember that there was this group also had their first partner performance management review on the topic of behavioral health. So that was a focus area where we took a really deep dive into looking at your behavioral health and mental health supports and providers. And we wanted to call this out because this program, this initiative will look very similar to that. In terms of how we'll approach it and what we'll use and how we will report out on the overall vendor performance. So our next topic now is type 2 diabetes and the associated comorbidities. So where we've been so far this year is we've worked closely with the vendors and carriers on gathering the data for these particular conditions. We've gathered the data based on the aligned metrics that the PEB OEB staff have all decided upon, and the goal then will be to present the key findings to SEOW in early 26. Okay. So that sets the stage as to where we've been thus far. So we can go to the next slide to talk about goals for vendor partner management. Broadly, as vendor partners are in place, there are goals to evaluate vendors to really continue to improve upon outcomes, the outcomes that they're delivering on behalf of members, the value that they bring to the organization, and the efficiency with which they operate. And so to do this, the goal is to really implement a standardized reporting criteria for all of the third-party contractors and for the carriers that are involved in this delivery to the population. And this current review, the scope of this current review is focused on the point solutions that we mentioned on the prior slide, those that directly target individuals living with type 2 diabetes and the comorbidities that surround them, that also include pre-diabetes and weight management support. So those are the overarching goals of this project and what we intend to achieve through this initiative. Move to the next slide. And so looking ahead to when we finalize this in Q1 2026, The goal really be to review the results of the evaluation, to use the data that we collected from all of the carriers and the solution providers in this area to review the evaluation, and then to identify the key themes and insights that are derived from the data that we gathered, and then to present the recommended action steps that's based on that overview. We also wanted to acknowledge that there will be some differences in terms of the action steps for OWEB and PEB in this exercise, just given the various initiatives that are ongoing. Wanted to quickly turn over to Andrew to talk a little bit on the PEB side and what we could look forward to on that as part of this evaluation.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Yeah, and one of those things we wanted to acknowledge was specifically this medical and pharmacy RFP that PEB has undertaken. And so, as you all know, we are midstream on that effort. The awarded vendors, whoever they will be going live effective 1/1/27. And so, given that there isn't a medical renewal per se for the 2027 plan year, it will look a little bit more like an implementation. And so we just wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about that nuance and acknowledge the fact that some of the actions coming out of this effort, as well as the summer research effort, may be different between the boards given this RFP. That's in one sense, it's sort of business as usual. Per the charter, each board makes their own recommendations to their respective broader boards based on these efforts that we do and collaborate on with SEOW. And so, at this point, and in today's meeting, we're providing updates on these efforts. We're not at the point where we're really talking about specific actions. Those are going to get teased out, over the next however many months. And so we don't exactly know what that's going to look like for PEB versus OEB. And so just wanted to acknowledge it at this point, and say that there's going to be more to come as we, together work to explore what those actions and recommendations might be for the boards for 2027. So I know we haven't spent a ton of time talking about the PEB RFP with this group, which makes sense. This is a group focused on exploring complex clinical issues. So I do want to pause and see if there are any questions or comments based on how we're thinking about how these actions might differ between the boards.
Although not our RFP, we're very interested in how it's going.
Yeah, I can give you a quick update on where we're at, Bill. We are getting very close to releasing it. And so our effort to date across lots of different folks who've been involved in it has really been in a sort of development capacity. And so we've hit some major milestones and we're very close to publishing it. And so more to come. But that's kind of where we're at in our very long timeline. It's, as you can imagine, a very complex project spanning multiple years. And so a lot of effort has been put into it. We've still got a ways to go, but we're about to hit a major milestone when we publish it.
But it's big time learning for us, right? We're very much learning.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Okay, yeah, if no other questions or comments, Rob, I will turn it back over to you.
Great. Thanks, Andrew, for adding that nuance and clarity. Okay, we can look to the next slide. The next slide. All right, perfect. Thanks. As Andrew was talking about the differences in PEB and OEB with all the various goings on, I really wanted to hone in the aligned core values of the two groups and how those played into the goals with this vendor partner evaluation. And, as you'll see on the left-hand side, the OEB goals of providing equitable access and quality care really align with the PEB's core values in quality of care and equity. And then acknowledging the tie-in there is that vendor partners really any of the vendor partners, and even including those that address type 2 diabetes and comorbidities, really supplement the benefits that you provide to close those gaps in care, to where individuals are experiencing gaps in care for diabetes, and then provide that specialty care in those focus areas. So they're really addressing these core values for both OEB and PEB. Similarly, goals of reducing out-of-pocket costs and also the goal of affordability align well. And the vendor partners in these categories and all categories also help reduce member out-of-pocket costs. Many of these solutions provide devices and access to test kits and things like that that really provide access to some of these care and services at low or no cost to members that really are closing gaps, helping individuals manage those costs and affordability. So again, very aligned with the core values and goals. And then finally, under member education, member experience, aligned with this from OEB and PEB respectively, all the vendor partners in this area, core component of type 2 diabetes and managing the comorbidities is education, helping individuals understand the condition that they're living with, and then really providing condition-specific services, content to help them understand things, and then coaching associated with that to help the members manage their various needs. So again, aligning with the goals of education and experience. So we move really well. This group is really well aligned in our overall evaluation of the programs. This slide covers just some overall demographic data, and of course we'll use the data and what we know about the various populations to inform much of the analysis, but wanted to just take this opportunity to show the differences in the data between both OEB and PEB. And again, how the various programs that you provide align with that. You see on the OEB side that there are 13 medical plans, the majority split between, or all split between Kaiser and Moda. Well, because these services provide access to care, it's important to understand the split between urban and rural, and then also the various demographics with female versus male individuals. Similarly, on the PEB side, is a bit more of a split, with Providence being one of the health plan offerings, and a bit more urban folks on the PEB side, but again, using the demographic data and the things that we know about the various populations to inform the analysis and to level set on what our goals will be. And then the following slide really looks at those associated comorbidities. So we've spent a lot of time talking about type 2 diabetes in this meeting. And certainly that is a common condition among individuals throughout the country, throughout the world, frankly. And then the recognition is that there's a number of comorbidities that are associated with individuals that live with diabetes. Some of them are directly correlated. Some of them are common to see. For example, hypertension, diabetes often go together, as do other sort of heart type conditions. But then other conditions that you may not think about can also be associated with type 2 diabetes. And then it's also important to note the slide you're looking at here really shows the number of individuals and associated spend with OEB and PEB for individuals that are living with diabetes, but then where those overlap with other conditions. So for example, there are also 2,294 patients living with both cancer and diabetes. And while there may not be a direct correlation in all cases, it's important to note that those members have unique needs, and that they're supported in all facets of their care. And so we really want to encompass all of the various types of conditions that someone may have, and acknowledge that needs are varied, and really take all of the data into account when we're doing this member evaluation. Okay, any questions on anything I have covered thus far? Okay, I am going to turn it over to my colleague Katie to pick up here to talk about health equity and the mechanics of this, the rest of the evaluation.
Thank you, Rob. Can everyone hear me? Okay, because I'm on my phone. So Rob just talked through some of the PEB and OEB specific data around prevalence of diabetes and associated comorbidities. But we wanted to recognize that that's, reflective of the population that's been interacting with the health plan. And national statistics tell us that there may be an even greater opportunity to reaching OEB and PEB members. Specific to Oregon, we know that about 9% of adults in Oregon have diabetes, and about 34% of adults in Oregon have been diagnosed with hypertension. From a national viewpoint, pretty high percentage, around 75% of US adults are people with who are overweight or have obesity. So really, we just again adding to the story here with the importance of and value of having programming to support these diagnoses and really PEB and OEB members. And we, of course, wanted to add in health equity insights here as well from an equity lens. The percentages over here on the right, this is reflective of all demographics, but these percentages significantly increase for historically marginalized populations, especially compared to white Americans or those who identify as white. So American Indian, Alaska Native, the diabetes prevalence is about 14%, so quite higher than the 9% you can see here. That's nationally compared to the 9% for Oregon specifically. About 12% of those who identify as Black have diabetes, about 12% for those who identify as Hispanic, and 9% for those who identify as Asian, compared to 7% who identify as white. So pretty staggering statistics and disparities here. And social determinants of health also significantly impact the prevalence of diabetes and associated comorbidities, things like socioeconomic status, neighborhood walkability, food insecurity as well, and access to healthy foods. So again, all this to say that in reviewing the performance of these vendors, this is really an important part of the story to consider how to reach PEB and OEB members most in need. I see someone has the hand raised.
That'd be me, as usual. Do we have those SOD, the social determinants of health metrics in Oregon? By region, by demographic?
We can probably have a zip code analysis if we don't already have to understand where there's greatest social risk for some of the main social determinants. We also have looked at prevalence of food insecurity risk. I know Feeding America is a great resource. They have an interactive map. So we don't have it as part of this presentation, but we're happy to, gather it if the health equity work group hasn't already done so.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure. Great question. Okay, so moving on then, we wanted to move into, now that we've kind of talked through background and prevalence, we wanted to focus on the vendor performance review itself that we'll be going through in early 2026. So lots of vendors included here. You can see reflective of OEB and PEBs, carriers, the core programs on the far left to say, Kaiser's programs, MODA's, and Providence's programs. And then across the top here, we recognize the category of vendor that each of these carriers offer to members. So within diabetes prevention, we'll be looking at OMADA for both Kaiser and Providence, and then MODA's pre-D program that they have. Within weight management, all three vendors offer a Weight Watchers program. Kaiser also has a OMADA weight management program and their own internal Kaiser branded weight management program. So we'll be looking at metrics for that category. And then diabetes management. Kaiser offers their own diabetes management program. MODA has Livongo and Virta as programs, and Providence has OMADA and Virta. And then finally, again, as thinking about reach, Kaiser and MODA do offer general lifestyle health coaching programs, so related to kind of maybe lighter touch, weight loss, things like that. So there were also metrics collected on those programs as well. So in terms of what to expect looking ahead, if we go to the next slide, for those of you who were involved in the behavioral health performance review earlier this year, this is going to look pretty similar. In terms of selecting vendor partners, you just saw the vendors that are included within this performance area, focus area. We are going now through, we've collected all the information from all the vendors after agreeing upon the metrics, as Rob mentioned earlier. So we already went through the data request and we've collected the data, and we're starting to dig through lots and lots of data and organize and summarize it for you all. The categories that we're looking at include metrics on engagement and utilization, what the member experience is like, health equity, of course, and then clinical and operational outcomes. So these are aligned for all of the different vendor categories I just talked through. And then finally, the next step really is going to be to come together in Q1 2026 and review the results and talk through recommended actions based on our findings. Okay, so next steps from here. Do just want to pause and see if there are any additional thoughts or questions from the group. Otherwise, we'll be continuing to pull together the detailed evaluation deck, and we look forward to meeting with you all in January or early Q1.
Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions?
Are we still kind of focusing on just communication and education of our members as kind of, as well as the effectiveness of the programs, of course, but are we also still focusing on that part of the program?
I see
Yeah,
head nodding.
I can answer that. Yeah, that member experience piece is certainly part of it in terms of how members, have awareness of the program itself. But also another big part of it is understanding, for those who do engage with the program, how often are they coming back to the program, especially thinking about some of the details of the program, like interacting with coaches or, completing kind of all the prescribed program requirements. And then outcomes is a really big piece of this review, as well as understanding, not just weight loss, but also, for a pre-diabetes program, how many participants ended up, developing type 2 diabetes or not, or lowering their HbA1c, like Dr. Yana was talking about earlier. So it is sort of a mix of all those different things.
Okay.
Ollie has his hand up.
Yeah.
Oh,
good question.
perfect.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I thought Katie actually put that really well. And we should be able to get that social determinants of health data across the state from our OHA resources bill. So we'll get that out to the group here ASAP. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Okay, well, thank you so much, Katie and Rob, for that presentation. And now I think I have a quick vaccine coverage update that we're going to get from.
Yeah. Hi, Kimberly. This is Margaret. You bet.
Good morning, Margaret.
Good morning. It is good to see everyone. And as many of you may be hearing, there is chatter occurring around this season's COVID vaccination protocols. And so wanted to share some quick updates and acknowledge that this situation is continuing to evolve. So we're watching it closely and expecting there'll likely be additional updates in the coming weeks. But at the present time, OEB and PEB coverage of vaccines hasn't changed. So all OEB and PEB carriers continue to fully cover the vaccine for anyone who receives it. What members are experiencing is that they may be encountering some changes with regard to access. In Oregon, pharmacies are able to prescribe, dispense, and administer vaccines in adherence with the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, also known as ACIP. Now, ACIP has not met to make a recommendation about the 2025-26 COVID vaccine yet. So although the vaccines are out there and authorized for some, and FDA has reduced the populations that are authorized to receive the vaccine, that for which the vaccine has authorization, pharmacists, to the degree that they have them in stock, are must get a prescription from the patient's provider in order to give the vaccine. ACIP is scheduled to meet late next week, September 18th. So we're watching closely to see what their recommendation may be. Additionally, you all have likely heard about the Western Health Alliance. Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii are joining forces to develop their own sort of guidelines related to vaccines, and remains to be seen what other guidelines may come from that group. That effort is being stood up. And so I think we're anticipating that there will be more direction coming from there as well. So currently, members have full coverage for the vaccines. If they go to a pharmacy to get one, the pharmacy will tell them that they need a prescription from their physician. I have heard anecdotally from providers out there that their offices are getting messages from pharmacies seeking vaccine orders so that they can administer. Want to highlight one distinction. So OEB and PEB have long partnered with Get a Flu Shot to go on site to work sites and provide vaccination clinics for both flu and COVID. Get a Flu Shot is not a pharmacy, so they operate under sort of different regulatory requirements. They are able at worksite clinics to, their nurses are able to walk through an informed consent process and sort of a shared clinical decision making. They have revised their forms to include some language that allows members to self-attest and have that informed consent conversation with the nurses on site. And so they have indicated they will be able to provide COVID vaccines at worksite clinics for anyone who attends and requests and provides that informed consent. They did, when I spoke with them just the other day, they were expecting their actual vaccine shipment this morning, I believe. So provided that came in a timely way, they expect to have it in hand for any work site events that where agencies or schools or work sites have scheduled. So members there is some confusion. We're definitely fielding questions. The experience will be a little bit different depending on where members go. And, as I said, I think we are expecting that there are going to be, in the near term, additional developments that'll help us kind of determine next steps. One clarification I want to make really clear. So the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices did meet earlier this summer and provide approval for the flu shot for anyone 6 months and older. So this is very specific to the COVID vaccine at this point in time. Flu shots are, from the member perspective, should be same as always in terms of being able to go to the pharmacy or a worksite clinic and receive those as desired. Andy, I see your hand up.
Yes, so I just wanted to ask, so Kaiser's notice on their website, or if you go in to try and get a COVID shot, is that they're not offering them past August 8th, and that they would start administering. It wasn't clear if they were going to administer them once they got them in, but right now in Kaiser, we can't access COVID shots.
So I do know Kaiser opens scheduling typically for their fall clinics on a certain date in early September. Typically it says check back to schedule after X date. And I can't remember exactly. It's an early September date. I'll just pause. I don't know if anyone from Kaiser
September
is
20th.
September 20th. Okay, thank you.
User, I've already gotten the message. So they didn't say anything about COVID, but the flu vaccination started on September 20th.
Yeah, so the flu one I got signed up for, but when I went in for COVID, it said that they were not offering them and didn't have them at this time. So that was my only concern.
Okay. And I know the information we've received from Kaiser is that they're covered same as always has been. There's been no change to cover. So I'm speculating here. I wonder if it's a supply inventory.
That's what it sounded like. So that's I just wanted to like that was kind of what it seemed like. So it didn't seem like they were not saying no. But anyway, so I just want to put that out there in case you get questions. I'm getting lots of questions from people.
Yeah, definitely. And I will definitely touch base with the Kaiser folks and just confirm on that. I know that just talking with some different folks in this space that, shipments are working their way through the supply chain. And so it could be that they're just not scheduling because they don't quite have it in hand. I'll pause if anyone from Kaiser wants to chime in.
Sapari came on screen.
Yeah. Hi, Margaret. Hi, Andrea. Yes, that is the case. We're actually trying to wade through, all of the federal legislation that is coming through. So we will continue to monitor that, continue to monitor the Western Alliance. And, as soon as, when we have it all in order, we'll definitely make sure that it's updated on our website and communicated to our membership.
Great. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Yeah, and so just want to reiterate, as always, if you hear questions from members or concerns, certainly feel free to send those to staff. We are fielding those questions as we get them, but I know sometimes members come directly, to you as their point of contact. So we're happy to help folks out as needed.
And remember, there's no passive sign up this year. You've got to go on and you've got to enroll. Nobody's doing it for you this year. So
that is
you gotta
true.
Remind your people. So we've got a little spoiled. There's been a lot of things we got a little spoiled. Yes.
Margaret, we probably want to mention this in the OWEB board meeting as well, because there are different constituency groups in that group.
Yep, absolutely. I believe it is on the agenda for this afternoon. So we'll definitely spend a few minutes on it.
And did we have any public comment, Rose?
No public comment.
Thank you. Okay. Did anybody else have anything that they wanted to add for the good of the order? Glenn, did we cover everything?
Yeah.
Nice. Well, it's so wonderful to see all of you, and we're going to wrap this up. A lot of you are going to have an afternoon of more meetings, and so we'll give you a little bit of time back. And thank you so much. It's always good to see you. Please be safe and be well. And if you need anything, you know where to find us. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone.